Good morning. This weekend I will be working on a little project and I decided to document it on video. I will be turning this old unused computer power supply that I pulled out of an old computer into a general purpose power supply to use on the workbench. There are other videos on YouTube, there's information on the internet about how to do this. This is just my take on it. I always need power when I'm working on projects such as with my Raspberry Pis, or LED strips, or remote control vehicles, these are electric motors, or just random electronic projects. I usually get by with a wall wart or a battery pack or other power supplies. I always end up using 5 volts or 12 volts. What's nice about this is that the computer power supply already provides regulated 3.3 volts, 5 volts, and 12 volts with impulse current. So that seems like a great candidate to provide all the power that I will need for my projects. But before I go any further with this project, I want to make sure the power supply is working. It came out of a computer that was working, but it's been sitting on a shelf for a few years. So I want to make sure before I cut wires and get too excited and spend any time on this that the power supply is working correctly. I can easily test this with a multimeter, and I will plug the power supply into the wall and do some measurements. So here it is connected. I will use this and turn it on, and nothing happens. And that's because I have to fool the power supply into thinking I just pressed the button on the computer. So I will do this by shorting the green wire with ground. So the ground is any black wire, and the green wire is the wire that's connected to that button in front of the computer that you press and it wakes up the computer. So I can do this on this connector there with a paper clip. I have paper clips here. This one will do. Good shape. I can squeeze this in a little bit more. And so if I short this, the power supply should come on, and there it goes. So the fan is turning. It's very silent, very quiet, so I will need to put on an LED because otherwise I won't know that it's running unless I'm looking at it. But so this is working, so far so good. I will leave it running for a little bit while I do my measurements. Some power supplies a long time ago they used to require a load on the 12 volt or the 3 volt, the 12 volt or the 5 volt rail. And without a load, then the power supply would shut down. But that was a long time ago. I don't believe these power supplies, especially this one, has this requirement. So using the multimeter, I will do some measurements. Stand it up here. I will do some measurements. Let's get some ground. So plugging the black on the ground, and let's look at the red wire like this. The red wire gives me 5.23 volts. That's what I'm looking for. The orange wire gives me 3.4 volts. So a little bit over the 3.3, and the 5 volt is a little bit over 5.23. And let's see the yellow. The yellow is 11.81, so a little bit under the 12 volt, but it's always like that. It's never exactly the voltage. It's always within tolerance. So 11. I'll look at other connectors, other wires. Here's a SATA power connector. That's the only one in this power supply, so that gives its age. Today power supplies have a lot of SATA connectors, SATA power connectors. So the orange wire, 3.4 volts. Red wire, 5.23 volts. Yellow, 11.81. So maybe one more here. Red. I can't reach. Yeah, I can. Right there. 5.23 on the red, and 3.4 on the orange. So it's pretty stable. I just disconnected this. It's pretty stable across all the wires, and it's been running for what, 2 minutes now, and it's still running. There's no problem, so there's no need for a load anywhere. Here are my parameters for this DIY project. First of all, I want the unit to be self-contained. I want all the connections to be directly on the box, on the power supply itself. What I don't want to do is have the power supply and a box with connectors on the side connected with wires. I don't find that convenient, and I find it a bit dangerous that the wires can get snagged on tools or other things on the workbench. Instead, what I want is a self-contained unit, all the connectors directly on the box. It's a smaller footprint on the workbench, it's easier to store, it's easier to take out. There's only one thing to worry about. The other thing is, I want to take advantage of the different rails, different voltages provided by the power supply. So I will be adding connectors, a pair of connectors for 3 volts, 5 volts, and 12 volts. Also, it would be nice to have a 1 or 2 USB connectors with 5 volts, because so many devices these days use USB connections. And finally, and that should have been number 1 really, is that this is a DIY project. It has to be done cheaply. I already had this power supply, I'm not paying extra for it. And it will be the same for everything else. I will have to buy the connectors. I don't have the connectors. But everything else that I do with this power supply will have to be done cheaply. If I have to purchase something, it will have to be done cheaply, but I will try to reuse anything that I have at home or in the toolbox. Taking a closer look at the power supply, I'm noticing a few things. First of all, there's a lot of dust on the blades of the fan, and that probably means there's dust inside. I will have to clean that up. I guess that means my house is dusty. From this angle, I see that the fan takes a lot of space inside. It takes about 1/3 of the space of the power supply. There's a bit of a gap there, but I will have to work hard to reroute the wires on the inside. I don't want to have the fan on the outside. I've seen people doing this. It's a solution, but I would like to keep it as small as possible, and I will work hard to keep the wires on the inside. There's already a switch. I won't be adding another switch. There's already a switch there. It's already wired and everything. That's all I need. The label provides some information. So it's a 350 watt power supply. Here are the 3.3, 5 volt and 12 volt rails. It gives us the power and the color of wires for each one. And here's the bunch of wires coming out of here. And there's this big opening there. I'll have to figure out what to do, because once the wires are rerouted inside, I will have a hole there. So I'll have to figure that out. Maybe I'll just put a sticker or something. And that's about it for this power supply. Here's what I used to make this project. There's the power supply, of course. The binding posts are used to bring the power to the outside of the power supply. These are very nice. You can connect to them with a banana plug, alligator clips, with just a bare wire like this by opening the plastic cap. There's the ring connectors. These are used to connect the wires to the inside of the binding post, like this. The LED and a resistor to control the current. I used a single 330 ohms. I harvested the USB connector from this car charger I got at the dollar store. And of course, there's all sorts of tools and supplies that I used at different points in the project. There's also the tools that I use in the workshop, like a drill and a hammer and a few other things. Nothing complicated. All right. So, let's see. I need to start these holes, otherwise the drill bit's going to drift. I could use a fancy punch, but I don't have a fancy punch. I have low-tech, a nail and a hammer, and that's what I will use. So let's see. I need to make sure I'm exactly the right location. Right there. Right there. Nice. Perfect. Okay. So we'll repeat this 5 more times. I'm ready to start drilling. Let's see, this is the size of the hole that I need, and that's approximately a 1/8 of an inch bit. Yeah, yep, that's pretty good. So let's just go for it. And there we go. 6 holes. They're all exactly where I needed them to be. The drill bit did not drift. That's perfect. So next I'm going to clean up the inside of this. There we go. Nice and smooth. Let's see. Let's attach a binding post as a test. This screw, this screw. Now I tested earlier and the binding post goes through the hole no problem. But by making it, by cleaning it up like this, it will make sure that the binding post is sitting straight. Don't lose that. There we go. So here's what it looks like after putting all 6 binding posts. It looks pretty nice, it looks pretty clean. And inside I've attached just the loop connectors. There's no wires yet, but it's just so that I can see the size that I need, the amount of space I need inside. And that's actually a bit of an issue. Space is definitely at a premium inside of this power supply. With the fan in place, in its position, right here, there's really not much room on that side. This is the be careful not to snag anything there. This is the position of the power supply there on that side. I mean the fan on that side. So there's really not a whole lot of space there. It's really only at the top that I can put anything. At the bottom there's too many components. So what I'm doing instead is I will turn the cover on the other side. This will have the effect of pushing the fan on that side. And this frees up enough room up here on that side, something like this, on that side where the binding posts and the loops and the wires will fit nicely there. In fact, it frees up a little bit of space over here. This plastic, I'm not too sure what it's for. It's probably to prevent contact of any of the component with the case, so I'll be careful with that. But it frees up enough space here that I can put something I wanted to do. I can put USB connectors here. So this is the dollar store car charger that I will use for that. So I will try now to put the USB connectors here, not go too low, so I'll take some measurements and take my time to carefully put them in here, and that will be a nice addition to the power supply. Okay, I believe I am done with the holes and the openings on the panel, so I will assemble that real quick and see what it looks like. I won't assemble, but I will do a dry fit to see what it looks like. I think it looks pretty sexy, so put this together real quick. That looks pretty nice. Put the LED in here. It's going to be glued. And the two USB connectors, USB ports. Here's one. These are not very solid. I have to hold them. They will be. I will probably JB weld those. I don't think hot glue would be strong enough for that. Come on, you have to insist a bit. There we go. That looks pretty sweet. And the switch is in the back there. The cable is in the back there. Okay, very nice. Okay, now the JB weld for the USB connectors is setting, so I have a bit of time. It's going to take, what, really 24 hours before it's completely cured. So in the meantime, I will prepare the LED. I just need to put a little resistor on it so that it doesn't fry. So let's see. The positive, yeah, I bent the positive lead a little bit. So I will use my extra hands here to support it, and I am using that's a 330 ohm resistor. I will put it on the positive side of the LED, and because space is at a premium, what I will do is I will make this very short, and I will cover all of this inside of a shrink tube so that it's protected, so only the end of the lead will show. And in fact, I will make it shorter and cut the shrink tube very short. So let's start with this. Give me a bit of room to work like that. And yeah, that's decent. When there's a solder on one of these leads, the solder makes it much harder to bend. So I will pre-bend a little bit the lead, and I will cut this one not too short, maybe here, like that. And I will pre-bend it a little bit, use pliers for that. Something like this. I'll try to match the bend on both of them. Solid connection. And just as a test, I have a 9-volt battery here. I will be plugging the LED on a 5-volt rail. Let's see. Put this on the positive like that, so we have a good connection, so all good. I just casually threw the battery there because I thought it was going to be cool, just throw it there, but it's dangerous. There's pieces of metal there, so careful. Let's see, shrink tube, there we go. Alright, I am part of the way through the project, and I thought it would be a good time to take a look and see where things are. So when I opened the case, the first thing I did is I ran the wires back inside from that hole in the back, and I separated the bundles and I clipped the connectors. So here's some of the connectors here. I was careful to clip as close as like in this case, as close as possible to the Molex connector to have the longest possible wire so that I don't run out. And also that's going to give me the most leftover that I can then use on other projects. I separated the wires in the 3 volts bundle, 5 volt bundle, and 12 volt bundle. So I have some ground wires with the positive 3, 5, and 12. This other bundle here, so that's the gray wire. That's for the LED, and I kept 2 5 volt and some ground for the USB connectors. The green wire, that's the power on. I will either solder it or attach it to one of the connectors. I haven't decided yet, but so it needs to be attached to ground. And the other 3 wires, so white, blue, and purple. That's -5, -12, and standby. I won't need those, so I will clip them and I will cover them to protect them so there's no short circuit inside of the case. The front of the case looks like this. It's been assembled. It looks really nice. I like it. So there's the binding posts there. They've been screwed in. The LED light is held in place with hot glue, and the USB connectors are held in place with JB Weld, very strong. I've already done the 3-volt connections, so it looks like this. So the wires are attached to the, I can only put 3, or I was able to fit 4 in one case, wires inside of one connection, then it gets crimped. And then all of this is covered with shrink tubing. So there's two ring tongue connectors on each binding post. So it looks like this. So I'm running it at the top of the case, and I will do the same thing with the others. So I've already done the 3 volts. I'm about to start the 12 volts here, and I'm sorry, the 5 volts, and then I will do the 12 volts after that. And when they're all connected to the binding post, then I'll start soldering. There's not a whole lot of work left. It's a bit tedious just because there's a lot of wires, but it's not hard. So I'll just take my time, and I will be done pretty soon. So on with the project. And here's the final product. Here's a quick look around. And so clearly this is the business end. It respects all 3 requirements that I had. It's a single unit, it's self-contained. I get the 3 volt, 5 volt and 12 volt connectors, plus I get 2 USB connectors. Awesome. And also it was inexpensive. I already had the power supply, I'm reusing it. I had to buy the binding posts, and I had the LED, and the USB connectors, they came from these dollar store car chargers, and I desoldered the USB connector. So I'm very pleased with this. I get the right voltage at the right place, so it's everything that I wanted out of it. Let me power it on. That way I can show off 2 things. The fan, and the fan is completely silent, cannot hear it. And the LED came on in the front. In fact, let me use it right now to charge my phone. This was a fun project to make. It was not hard at all. I just turned a power supply into, well, a power supply. It did not take much time. It's very satisfying. You get the result quickly, and it's going to be super useful for other projects later on. I hope this has been helpful. If you ever decide to make one of these, please leave a note in the comments. I'd like to know how you've done it. See you next time.